Hello and welcome back to Stu's Structures. I am Mark Stewart and we're here for video 10 in the continuing series of building the freight house from Grafton, West Virginia on the B&O Railroad. So stay tuned. So I want to thank you for coming back and sharing this next video in this series of building the freight house. I am Mark Stewart, your favorite Pharaoh equestrianologist. You know, there's several things on this building we need to look at in this set of videos. We've got a long way to go with still building this, but in the last video we got the second story on the building. You know, I'd talked about a complication that I'd had earlier on. I've been able to correct all my mistakes to this point, but I've got something now that I look back at, and I wish I had raised the second story windows about a foot higher in that wall. And I'll kind of give you an explanation of why. These band boards where the roof came down on this side of the building to the overhang, on this other side as well, sat up, you know, 1 foot above where these ridge lines are for the supports that I was putting in to support the roof. And now if I put a 1 foot board on top of this, it's going to come up into the window. So I've got to think of another way. I can lower the band board and wrap it just across the top edge of this brick a little bit, and that'll compensate for that, and then put all my rafters coming out from that. It'll mean I'll have to change the way the wood is on this end and just have the roof come out to a, you know, this has that 4 foot overhang on it, and then have a slight wooden, you know, support out on the end out here, and it really wouldn't show. But in any case, I'm just thinking about different options to solve that situation at this point in time. So, you know, we're going to jump into this building now and just continue working on it, and those solutions hopefully will come to me as we're working on it. And so let's just jump into this and get going with it.
Now the first thing, remember when I added this second story on here, I wanted to wait and add this corrugated metal to the end because it needed to overlap the brick down at the bottom. So we're just going to come back here, and here I just went ahead and added the bottom row onto that, and then cleaned out the window and door opening, and then came back and added all the top row in there, and then cut the top edge where it meets the roof and the top edges of the windows and doors and cleaned those out, and then went ahead and glued the door and window into those openings. And there again, you know, it's the metal is kind of lumpy and everything, but I like the way it looks in any case. Now these windows that were too low before, I decided instead of dealing with all the odd thing was just to come back and raise these two windows a little bit. So I cut a little bit of the styrene out of the top of the window opening and glued it into the bottom of the window opening, and thereby raising the windows about 1 foot in HO scale. So, you know, they're going to be slightly higher than the rest of the ones as you come around the building, but I don't think it's that noticeable. So then I come back and glue the metal sheeting onto the bottom of that comes down and meets the roof underneath. And while that's setting up, I'm going to come back and start adding in roof supports. I have these two supports here for the second story building, but remember when I cut the walls, I had cut those just, you know, 2 pieces of plastic short from being wide enough to make that opening, and I had pre-cut these the same way. So I came back and added these 2 plates onto both the ends of those so that they would glue down inside the roof, and then I've got all the roof supports for the second story in place. And, you know, just added glue in here and put them in, and it's all good. Came back and added all these supports for the first story roof as well. And, you know, I kind of beefed up the corners of all these with some square styrene blocks in the corners to help them be a little stronger. And the next thing we're going to look at is coming through and pre-building all these doors. You can see that the wood overall of the structure in the panels themselves, all the wood slats are at 45 degree to the panel. And then there's these plates on top. It's one big solid door that rolls behind the door as an opening. So I'm coming back with this piece of basswood here and just marking all of my lines to pre-cut the panels at a 45 degree mark to the panel. That way all the wood grain will be going, at a 45 degree to the door. And then after I cut all these slats, I cut one end of them flat and then make up the pairs of these, and most of them are tall enough to go ahead and get 2 doors out of, and some of them only 1 door. But then I come back and cut the overall 10-foot height for all of them, and I have the basic stuff put together then for these doors. Now I'm just going to use this evergreen strip. I don't have the proper wood to come back and do the overlay wood on top the doors and the framing, so I'm just going to use this evergreen strip to come back and do that with. So to begin with, I just go ahead and mount strips across the top and the bottom of the 2 panels and tie them together as a single unit. And this gives me a good straight edge to work from on the top and bottom. And then I come back where they meet in the middle and I just mark individual little marks to kind of give me guides to come through and scribe the 45 degree angle boards. Remember now the wood grain is already running in that direction, but I need to make it look like these are all individual boards making up these panels. So I just come back and use my 45 degree triangle next to those plastic edges and come through with my knife, and I'm using my knife blade upside down and using the back side of the blade because I don't really want to cut heavy into this wood. I just want to leave a good indentation on the board. And then I come back and add the rest of the strips to the top of that door, or the whole door. Once everything's in, I do the 3 uprights first and then come back and do the 2 center shorter boards last, and all those doors will be done. Now the openings for the doors, remember I cut them clear to the ground, and I saved all this brick plastic for where those doors were cut out so I could come back and add bottoms in. In the original building, these were separate brick panels from the ground up too. I don't know why they weren't solid and tied in with the other walls, but basically I'm coming back and making these little panels and individually for each door because there's slight variances in them, and they're just a white piece of plastic glued to the back side of the brick, and then coming through and gluing them all in all the doors and getting the bottom of the doors up to where they need to be as far as the height goes. And now that's one more little thing off my list of things to do. Now the doors, or at least all the openings, are the proper size and height to work with. Now I'm coming back here in this vent panel at the very end. What I want to do is just add a little bit more styrene around the edges of it to make it have a more solid connection to the building. And then I cut this black paper and mount behind it so you can't see through it. And it gives a really nice effect to the vent at this point. I really like how this turned out and how it looks in the end of the building. It's nice. Now on that same sign, as I cut some of the other plastic, I come back and cut these 2-foot wide strips, and I cut them all a little bit longer than the first story roof because I'm going to use them for roof strips. And I come back and just start gluing all those across the ridge line and down at the bottom. I'm going to put some center pieces in later, but I'm just trying to give it some structural support right now for when I'm handling it. And then I come back and cut paper strips and the same width because I need to put door seals across all those little panels that I put in the bottoms of the doors. So first I just come through and cut all these strips, then I cut them to individually to each door the width, and I glue them on the face of the brick about 2 bricks tall and just let that set up overnight. Then I come back and glue them to the top edge with the paper glued. And I come back the next day and trim what excess is on the inside of the building off. So now we have the concrete seals on all the doors. And I'm just going to come through now and start manufacturing all these windows as well. I just have to take these Grant line windows and cut them in half with the middle sash wood out of them so I can use them. Okay, so the building is starting to come along really fast now. It was nice to get a final glimpse of the vent behind that wall with the blackout in it. It looks pretty good. I still got the paint to beef up and stuff like that. It's nice to get all these door seals in and get the doors underway and starting to manufacture the windows. I want to get some of the glass and windows in before I proceed further with the roof, just in case I need to get my grubby fingers in the top, especially on these second floor windows. I want to get the glass and everything in those before I get a roof on that for sure. The bottom wouldn't necessarily make that big of a difference, I don't think, but I'd still like to get the windows in place in there before I'll go on with that. And we'll have to start thinking about the walkways and stuff in around the building, because the one side's just a basic overhang, but the other side has a full platform underneath of it, and some of those posts come up and meet the ceiling stuff, so we'll have to be putting all that together at the same time. And anyway, I like where it's going. It's starting to look like the original structure. It's not a rivet counter building, but it's better than the average build. So in any case, in the last video I had asked for somebody to make a comment about a mistake that I had made and corrected. And there was one person, Nathan from Limping with Models with Nathan is his channel. I don't know if any of you read that, but this gable brick end here, I had mounted it on the wrong end of the building. And I mean, there's only one way that you could really tell the difference, and that this panel here where this square door is originally was a window panel in this building. And in the 1880s they cut that out and made it a square opening. And this brick gable end mounts on that corner on this end where that square door was. And when I had originally mounted it, I put it on the wrong end of the building. Just another case of duh, right? But in any case, it was easy just to come back and unloosen and take a knife and get underneath all these little tabs and stuff and cut it off and glue it back on. And anyway, congratulations, Nathan. I'm going to be shipping you out a small package of some of the stuff that I had molded as extras so you can use them as scenery. They're not, extremely fine as some parts you might buy in a store, but it's all pretty usable stuff. So, and the more scenery detail you have on your layout, the more realistic it is. So anyway, congratulations to you, Nathan. And as you go through these buildings, especially if it's not a kit, you're going to make some mistakes. That was a mistake I should not have made. The roof mistake that we talked about and the height of these windows, I maybe should have caught that in advance. But there's some things that, you just, no matter how well you think things out, you're going to come across issues when you're scratch building. It's going to happen. And it's nothing to get frustrated about. It's just you have to backtrack and think, okay, now how am I going to deal with this? Because those situations are going to come up if you're scratch building a building. They just are. With me, maybe there's more of those situations than some of you might have. I do try to think things through, but there's things that come up that I just hadn't thought about in advance of doing them. Some of them I think about as I'm doing them, so I don't have to go back and undo something and correct things. But every now and then, like the roof line, but we were able to overcome that. It wasn't that big of a deal, and nothing that I have done so far have I not been able to fix or correct as I went along. The only thing I guess I'm going to just leave them out altogether. The arch bricks over all the windows and doors, there was also another tiny row above these arches that I have on here that were little squares that they were brick, but they had a rounded outer protrusion on them, kind of like a rivet head would be on metal. Well, these were brick and they were molded in the brick. But those capped all these, archways in this. I just
I can't really think of a good way to do that. I mean, I have a little riveting machine that called the Sensapress from Northwest Short Lines. I could get a strip of plastic and probably imprint a bunch of rivets in them and then cut them out square and glue those on there. It's just they're so tiny, and with the overhangs on this building, except for the one on the end, they're not going to be that noticeable. Now, rivet counters out there are probably going, oh my God, what's he doing? But, you know, I'm going to live with it without those little squares above the archways on the doors. I mean, the archways and the brick were, you know, a little intense to cut out all those bricks and add those on. I mean, I like the way they look. I think they look good, and overall, if you're looking at this building, you're going to say, wow, that's the freight house in Grafton, West Virginia on the B&O Railroad. So, you know, I'm going to omit those and not add those onto this building. And in the next video, we're going to continue on with the next steps of putting this building together. And it's going to start coming together pretty quick now. In any case, I want to thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me and watching my videos and me put these buildings together. Hopefully you're out there scratch building something of your own and you know, learning. That's the only way to really figure it all out. You can watch other people do things and you can learn tricks and little tips. So, well, okay, that's how I need to do that. But you know, things are different for everybody. Some of the tools I use, somebody else probably has different tools to do some of the things that I do, and they work better for them than what I do. It's kind of an individualized thing. So just jump out there and learn and scratch build some buildings. You know, don't be intimidated. It's just a long process of sitting down and figuring out what you're going to do, what materials you're going to need, and then just jumping into it and doing things. Anyway, like and share these videos. There's a lot of people out there that would like to know how to do some of this stuff, and they don't know where to go to get the information. There's a few of us that build buildings here on Scratch Build Buildings on YouTube, but not a lot. So you know, put this information out there. I'm sure there's people out there that would like to scratch build some buildings for their layouts and don't know how to go about it. Hit the subscribe button underneath this video and you'll be you know, subscribed to the channel. If you hit the bell next to that, then you'll be notified each time a video comes out. So in any case, I hope you're enjoying the series. We've got a little ways to go on this yet, and I hope you're grabbing some materials and scratch building some buildings and taking some time to enjoy your trains. And happy model railroading.